Well, good afternoon, Holy Trinity. This is Pastor Daniel checking in with yet another video update. Now, today's video update is the long-awaited update on our roof. This update that you're about to see is a product of almost 1 year's worth of work that has been done by a committee that we formed to explore our options and ultimate decision on what we're going to do with our roof and our roof problem. So just appreciate that this is about a year's worth of work that we're going to sum up. I took the liberty of designing a PowerPoint presentation, as that seems to be the easiest way to not only visualize our issues, but also I can also show how the solution is going to work. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and transition over to the PowerPoint presentation that I have been working on. So here we go. Bear with me 2 seconds. And here we go. We have our lovely logo here. Must begin with that. So the leaks. You've heard me talk about leaks, especially after Hurricane Eta. We identified many leaks that we had across the property. These weren't new leaks. Many of them had existed for a while, but Hurricane Eta made the leaks significantly worse. And so I wanted to outline the leaks. Now, most people are familiar with this leak. This is the leak that is in the cafe up on the ceiling. As you can see, we have missing ceiling tiles. I can use my pointer here. Ceiling tiles are missing. You can see the discoloration ceiling tiles. We have replaced other ceiling tiles, and that was per the fire marshal's request. This is the leak, and these are the leaks that are most familiar with the church, because many people are coming into the breakfast and into the cafe and into the thrift store and things like that. And you see these leaks. The leaks that are less known and are the worst leaks are here. This is inside the upstairs. So if you think over in the parish hall building, the second story where the classrooms are, in the south corner, there is a facilities room where all the air handlers are for the parish hall. This is where Mike's office is. This is one of the largest leaks that we have. Regardless of the severity of the storm, this leaks constantly. You can see a large trash can already here collecting water. There are multiple more on the floor. This is by far our worst leak in the church. This has been going on for pretty much my entire time that I've been here, and it has gotten steadily worse as time has gone on. This is another leak in the same room, just a little bit further to the left, another leak along the roof line that is leaking into this space, and we have to collect that water as well. Another leak is this leak. This is in a maintenance closet where we keep a lot of cleaning materials and things like that, along the same side, the south end of the upstairs building of the parish hall. This is another rather large leak that we have. It leaks regularly when we have rainstorms, another issue to be resolved. Now we're going to transition over to the church. Now this is in the church building. Now the good news about the sanctuary is that most of the leaks are confined to what would be the east edge of the roof. So majority of the roof does well. We don't have any major leaks in the sanctuary space itself, but behind the altar, which is where we have the vesting room, that is where we are in this picture. There was a leak in here. You can see the panel, and in this new panel in the previous storm, that had completely fallen through because of the water coming in. So that is a leak on the church building. And then this is a picture. This is an older picture of our storage room that is now where our new Sunday school, my children's Sunday school room is going to be. You can notice on the floor all of the stains. What had happened in this room is the leak isn't coming through the ceiling tiles. It's actually coming down the wall. It's coming behind the wall, down the wall, hits the floor, and then the water just comes out and stains the carpet. So the leak itself is along our front wall, the wall of the church that faces the hospital. Water's coming down that wall from the roof line behind the drywall wall and then into the room onto the floor. So these are the major leaks that we have. Depending on the severity of the storm and the rain, some of them don't leak at all until we get a very heavy thunderstorm with high winds and high level of rain. And some of the leaks, like the ones up in the second story of the parish hall, they leak routinely, regardless of the severity of the rain. So what's the cause? Why is our metal roof leaking? That is probably the number one question that I get. People ask, well, we got a metal roof. It's supposed to last 50 years. Why is it leaking and where are the leaks coming from? Okay, so here's a picture that I just took of our roof. This is actually the section that extends over the covered driveway. It's for illustration purposes. This is the kind of metal roof that we have. As you can see, simply by looking at it, it's metal. But you see all these little bumps that are on top of the metal? These are the screws that hold the metal roof down, which means the screw goes through the metal and then into the beam that's underneath it to hold it down. And that's where the problem comes. You see, the metal itself is in relatively good condition. It's metal. It was designed to last 50 plus years. The problem is the screws, or what we call the fasteners, the thing that fastens it down to the roof beam. Here's a closer picture of the screws that I'm talking about. You can see them. They are the shiny metal next to the red. These are what we call the fasteners, the screws that hold the metal down. I'm going to take a real close picture. Here's how this works. You have the metal, and the screw holds the metal down. But in between the screw head and the metal is a nylon washer. It's a little circular washer that sits here, and that's what creates the water barrier. That's what keeps water from coming into this hole and then into the building. And that's our problem. We have these washers are failing. Now, that is to be expected. You know, the metal can last 50 years, but these little washers are made out of nylon. And in the Florida heat, over time, they begin to break down. And many of them have broken down to the point where they have degraded, and now there's a gap. There's a gap here, and as the water runs down during the rain, the water can go right in the gap, through the hole in the metal, and then into the building. What happens then is it comes into the building, there's a thin layer of insulation right under the metal, and it pools inside the insulation. And eventually that insulation ruptures and the water comes straight into the building. And that's our problem. And that is where the water is coming from. These screws, the nylon washers here, are beginning to fail, and they're beginning to fail everywhere. And here's the problem. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of these screws holding the roof down. So it's almost like whack-a-mole. Once you repair an area, which we've done, they break down somewhere else. And eventually, they're going to continue to break down all over the roof. This is a design problem. And that is why we have had to finally address this issue. We have another problem too. This is called coping. You see, this is a picture of the front of the church. This metal covering that I'm running my pointer along that kind of outlines the building. This is called coping. The coping is failing also. In fact, this picture is directly above the wall next to the Sunday school room that I was talking about earlier, where the water runs down the wall and into the floor. And as you can see here, look at this piece of coping, how it bubbles up and it's rippled right here. During a high wind storm, the wind can actually push this coping out just enough for water to blow up inside there. And that's the water that's coming down the inside of the wall. Many of the roofing contractors that gave us bids were commenting on the poor condition of the coping, not only currently, but how it was originally installed was going to lend itself to particular roof leaks. And here's another picture of our coping. This is the top where our cross is over the sanctuary. You can even see how it's in multiple pieces here. This should be all one piece of metal. Every time you have a seam with metal, you introduce a place where water can get in. This should be one piece, but it's multiple pieces. This is how it was installed. And so this, again, presents an issue and something that needs to be replaced in order for us to button up our building and prevent water leaks. Now, the solution. So this is where the roofing committee did a significant amount of work as we were looking at our various options. The first thing we wanted to look at were all our options. What options do we have to repair our roof? So we did think about repairs, but as I alluded to earlier, we've tried to repair it. We've tried to repair and do spot repairs multiple times. The repairs don't last, and it doesn't eliminate the fundamental problem, which is all of the fasteners and all of the nylon washers that will eventually fail. If not now, definitely in the future. And it would just be an ongoing problem, and we would be dumping money into repairs that we know ultimately are going to fail us. So we looked at repair, but that was not really a viable option because it hasn't worked well for us. We looked at sealing the roof. There are companies out there that will come on and literally paint on a very thick layer of special sealants that can withstand the Florida heat and the sun, not break down, and seal the entire thing. The problem with the sealant options that we learned through the bid process was, A, it was extremely expensive. It wasn't really going to save us very much money. And number two, they didn't last. The warranties for the metal roof far exceeded the warranties for the sealant. So it didn't really present a viable option because it was going to cost us almost as much as a brand new roof, but we were going to get a quarter of the lifetime and guarantee. So the sealants ended up proving to not be a viable option. We looked at what's called an overlay, which is where you put a new roof on top of the current roof. There were reasons why we looked at this as a potential cost savings measure, but ultimately it wasn't going to save us any money. Actually, some of the overlay options were the most expensive of all the options. And the roofing committee decided that wasn't a smart way to go because we were still dealing with a roofing issue that would be underneath it. And that just wasn't a good stewardship for those that were going to come after us. And we wanted to make sure we set this church up for long-term success with the new roofing project. So the overlay, both from a cost perspective and from a long-term perspective, didn't really seem like a viable option after we looked into it. So that left us with a replacement, simply replacing the roof that we currently have. We could always replace sections of the roof, but then it would never match. We are at a position with a red roof that if we did parts of it, it would either look like a patchwork, or if we did like one building and not the other, there's no way we could ever get it to match. So we had to really entertain a complete replacement of the metal roof and the flashing and the coping. And the gutters. It all has to be replaced if it's all going to aesthetically look good and match one another. Everything has to be replaced if we look at the replacement option. With regards to the replacement option, we had narrowed it down to what's called a standing seam metal roof. We looked at various options from shingles to tiles, but tiles was extremely expensive. To other kinds of metal roofs. And really, we landed on a standing seam metal roof. Now, why standing seam? And what makes standing seam so viable in our case. This is a standing seam roof. Now, many of you, if you have neighbors who have metal roofs, or if you're paying attention when you're driving up and down the road and you see other commercial buildings and things like that, this is the kind of metal roof that we're most accustomed to seeing. It's called a standing seam roof. It has these ridges that run up and down the roof, and that ridge is the standing seam, and that is the seam of each panel. This is how it works. You have a clip that is what bolts to your beams, right? This is what fastens to the beam. Unlike our current roof, where the screw or the fastener goes through the metal to hold it down, in a standing seam roof, the clip is fastened underneath the panel. And then the two panels sit side by side, and then they run a machine down the seam that folds it. And then it'll fold it again. It gets a two-fold, and this makes a watertight seal. But as you can see, there's no exposed fasteners on the outside. Everything is underneath the roof that holds it down, which leaves you a smooth, fastenerless application on the top. So you don't have those screws that can leak and allow water into the building because they are all underneath the metal. This is the most popular type of metal roof in Florida. And it is the direction that we opted to go with regards to replacement. So when we got our bids, we were looking at a replacement bid with a standing seam roof. A hidden fastener roof is another way to look at it. So with the bid process. Well, as I said earlier, through the bid process, because we did get bids on overlay and seals and sealants, and they just proved to not be either worth the money or too expensive. So like I said, it essentially put us to a purchase of a new roof and a replacement. So we turned our focus to the replacement. We requested a total of 9 bids. Now, this is one of the reasons why this process took so long. We would go out and try to get bids from 2 or 3 companies, and they would take their time to get back with us. Some of them came out and looked at the property. Some of them didn't. But unfortunately, we got turned down by most all the companies. We only received 3 actual bids. And it was a very disappointing and frustrating process as months would go by. And we would think we would be getting a bid from a company, and then they would finally tell us, no, we're not interested. And there's a variety of reasons for this. Number one, the size of our project. And number 2, the difficulty of our project. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute. This is a very difficult roof to replace. It's time consuming. It's labor intensive. And we were calling mostly commercial metal roofing companies or commercial roofing companies. And even many of them were turning us down, and it's because of the style of building and metal roof that we require. And it was just a job that most of these roofers were not interested in doing. And so it was an arduous and disappointing process, but ultimately we got 3 bids to which we could work from and compare. And what we ended up doing is once we got those 3 bids, we did a rebid process, and we did interviews with the companies, in-person interviews, to make our final selection. And our final selection, we ended up choosing, it's a local roofer named Aries. Aries Roofing Systems. They are out of Tarpon Springs. They brought to the table a lot of stuff that we like to hear, and we thought also would be best for not only our repair and current situation, but also they would install a roof that would set us up very well for the distant future. They've been in business for over 30 years. Like I said, they're a local roofer, a family-owned roofer. They use no subcontracted workers. Which was appealing to us. Every single one of their roofers is an employee of the company. In fact, they do something that none of us had ever heard of. Every single roofer that is up on the roof has full benefits with retirement plan. I mean, this is a company that actually really takes care of its employees, and we found that of value and of respect, because that's a component of the quality of install that they stand behind. They were a competitive price. I will say they weren't our cheapest bid, but not by much. They were a competitive price of the 3 bids that we did get. They were the middle. I said 3. There was one that was extremely expensive. Aries was the middle bid. And then there was a roofer that came in just a little bit under Aries, but Aries outdid them both in the experience, being a local roofer, no subcontracted workers, but also the 20-year workmanship warranty. So the roof itself comes with a 35-plus year manufacturer warranty. There's varying warranties for the paint, the fading, and the corrosion. But what set Aries aside is the 20-year workmanship. Every other roofer that we contacted, they did a 10-year workmanship. The workmanship warranty is the warranty through the roofer itself. They are the ones that are guaranteeing that the install will stay good, nothing's going to fall off the building, and that it won't leak, unless, of course, it's damaged by, let's say, a storm or something like that. But they're guaranteeing that this roof is going to be sound for 20 years, and they will come out and do any kind of repair necessary for 20 years. This was over double everybody else. Everybody else was a 10-year workmanship. Aries is a 20-year workmanship. They stand behind their install. They stand behind the products that they put on top of the roofs. And we thought that was what really gave them the edge over all the companies, because we know once we get the roof up, we have 20 years of peace of mind through Aries roofing. So that's why we just selected Aries. But here comes the cost. Many of you might be wondering, why are we doing a whole video on this and making a big deal? Why did you spend an entire year trying to figure out what we should do? It is the cost. This is a significant investment for this property. Many of you have probably had to replace roofs at your homes and things like that. You know that that's an investment for your own home. This is a significant investment for this property. The roof replacement cost alone is $298,000, almost a $300,000 roofing project is what we are about to engage upon. Now that includes the standing seam roofing system. It's complete install, new flashing, sealing up all of our plumbing vents and things like that are up on the roof, and also all new coping that is part of our issue causing leaks. This includes everything except the gutters. Aries doesn't do gutters. They use third-party contractors for gutters. Aries got us a guttering bid of $20,000 simply for the gutters, because we need oversized commercial gutters for this project. Aries was up front, and they said that they do charge a contractor cost for that, and they flat out told us that if we were to go and get our own gutter estimates outside of them, they will likely be cheaper. That's why I say up to $20,000 for the gutters. But this is a big cost for this particular roof system. A little bit of sticker shock. We weren't expecting this kind of value, but the bids that we got basically said this is what it's going to cost. Now, why so expensive? Okay, why does this cost the kind of money that it does? Number one, the overall size of the project. We are a large campus with a lot of metal and a large metal roofing system on 2 different buildings. And so the overall size of the project, it's just big. I mean, we were turned down by some companies because of the size of the project, and they just didn't have teams big enough to do it. So it's a big project, and it's going to take about a month to do, believe it or not. And so that's one of the reasons for the major cost. But the big reason for the cost is the type of roof that we have. It's called a direct to purlin install. You may be asking yourself, well, what does that mean? I'm about to show you. But because we have a direct to purlin install, we are required by code to have a thicker metal. So you can't use the kinds of metal thickness that are used on your homes and also on other commercial buildings that have a decking install. We are required by code, because our metal bolts direct to the purlins, to have a thicker metal. And then, of course, if you got thicker metal over all the square footage that you have, it drives just the price of the metal way up because it's more metal. And it's very labor intensive. This is not an easy install, and I'm about to show you why. So this is a traditional kind of roofing install. If you've had one done at your home, you know how this works. And other commercial buildings have decking. What is decking? So decking is you have your roof trusses, which we might be used to, and usually on top of the roof truss, you have plywood decking that screws down to the roof trusses. And then on top of the decking, you usually have a sealant, something that's usually tar, like tar paper. Sometimes they have these fancy sealants that go on top of the decking. And then on top of that, you put your metal or shingles or whatever, as you see in the picture here. We do not have this. This is not the kind of roof that we have. If you have this kind of roof, you can use the thinner metal because it's already 3-ply. You've got the plywood underneath. You've got a water barrier on top of the plywood. So code will allow you to use a much thinner metal because that's like the outer skin. And number two, as you can see in this picture, the roofers have something to stand on when they're installing the roof. So they can install these metal panels in a relatively fast fashion because they have a roof to stand on. And three, if this were to rain in the middle of a roof install, and it happens like if you've had a roof installed at your home, you've got plywood and you've got the water barrier to protect the contents of the home. So if it rains, it's no big deal. Roofers just stop until the rain stops, and then they can continue with their work with putting the new metal on. I say all that to say that is not what we have, which is why our metal roof is so expensive. This is what we have. We have what's called direct to purlin. So you have to learn a little bit of terminology here. These are the rafters. The rafters are the metal beams that hold the roof up. These rafters typically run horizontal, up and down to the building. I'm sorry, vertical. They run vertical up and down to the building. The purlins run horizontal, like left, right. They sit on top of the rafters to hold the roof up. And then the metal roof bolts directly to the purlins. Now, you can probably already see the challenge here when you're looking at the diagram. Number one, because there's no decking underneath, the code requires it to be much thicker metal. So that's contributing to the cost. Number two, what are the roofers standing on when they're doing the install? The beams. When they take the metal off, the only thing they have to stand on are the beams. So it's a slow process. It's slow to remove the metal, and it's slow to put the metal on because they don't have anything to stand on other than these beams. If they fall in the beam, they're going in the building. They're falling into the building. There's nothing there. And so it's a very slow and labor-intensive install. They actually have to take a panel off, put a panel on, take a panel off, put a panel on. And you can imagine the amount of time it's going to take to do this job. And that drives the labor costs up. It's a slow, intensive job. So between the thicker metal required for this type of application and also the slow and methodical nature of it, that is why this roof replacement is going to cost us almost $300,000. It's a nature of how our building was constructed. This is the style roof that we have. And so we have to use a replacement style that works with the roof system that we actually have. So that's the main reason why it's going to cost so much. And as I said in the other one, you also have the weather aspect. They also have to work slow and methodically, because they can't just take whole sections of the roof off and put it back on, because if it were to suddenly rain, there's nothing to keep the weather from coming into the building. So they have to keep the gap of when the panels are off relatively small. So if it does rain, they can cover it with a protective tarp until the rain passes and then continue with their work. All of this is contributing to the costs of the roof. So you might be saying, of course, great, how are we going to pay for this? Okay, so here we go. Here's the good news. Holy Trinity has in savings a fair amount of money that is still left over from the sale of the property to the south. We were able to do other repairs after that property was sold. We were able to do the parking lot and resurface and repave the parking lot. And then and we still have a pretty significant surplus in savings. And so the good news is that we actually have enough funds left over from the sale of the property to completely cover the roof and the gutters. And that's the good news. So we don't have to get a loan. We don't have to go out and apply a loan and then have to pay interest on the loan over time until it's paid off. We have the monies in hand to do this project right now. And we have done that. Once we approved Aries, we went and contracted with them and paid our deposit. And so this project is already running as of right now. And we're excited about that, but we're not done yet. We are looking at an option to do some metal recycling. Ernie Coquette has found a metal recycling company that is going to possibly bring out a bin, and as the roofers take the old metal off, it'll be tossed into the bin and ultimately be taken to a metal recycling company where they are going to give us money for the old metal. It's not going to be a significant amount. It's not going to, have a big impact in the 300,000, but it will be some. And so we're hoping to be able to do our due diligence there and get some money back simply from the old metal that's up on the roof. But we also want to fundraise. We feel that in order for us to be good stewards, we simply just can't use the money from the sale of the property and not have any kind of effort to possibly pay ourselves back. Now, we're not looking to raise the entire $300,000, but we are going to engage in a fundraiser for the remainder of this year where we're going to try to raise 150, half. Now, some of this will come from the membership of the church and the parishioners. Some of this will come from the excess revenues from the thrift store. But it is our goal that throughout this year to raise an additional $150,000 to basically pay ourselves back half of the cost and be able to put that back into that large allotment of money that we got from the sale of the property. We feel that that would be us being good stewards of the funds that we have been blessed with, but at the same time, allowing us to take on some of the responsibility of maintaining this property. I mean, if your roof at the home goes bad, you have to replace it. And it's your personal cost to do it. The church anyway is no different. We have a major expense that we're going to have to incur. And as a church family, we're going to have to raise some of the funds in order to pay for it. But we thought, half of it could come from the sale of the property. That was a blessing to this church. It allowed us to get out of debt. It allowed us to pay off the mortgage. It allowed us to get out of debt from the diocese and do some things, and including the roof as a major investment. But we thought that half would be an achievable goal, we believe, that we would replenish those funds. So I'm going to do a whole separate video on the fundraiser efforts and how we're going to do that. That'll be a separate topic for a separate time. But I just wanted to get this information out now so that everyone knows that going into the annual meeting if people have questions and things like that. So let me get back to my Zoom call. So as I said, we have already contracted with Aries. We paid our deposit. And as of right now, they are looking to start the roof project on March the 7th. Now that's, it's a floating date because in the roofing industry, you have to deal with weather lags that could affect other jobs. And you also have to deal with other jobs that may incur unknown issues, and it could delay. So they've told us that the target is March 7th. But as we get closer to that date, we'll know more if and when it's actually going to happen. It will impact the site. We are probably going to, like I said, it's going to be about a month-long, 4 to 5 week project. And so it is going to affect particularly the thrift store. We're going to have a game plan of when and how it's going to be open. It may have to close for some days while they're doing work directly over it. We may have to use different entrances and exits and things like that. We're going to have a plan to not only keep people safe from the roof work, but also to try to maintain our hours being open and things like that as much as possible to impact the site in the most minimalistic way. But that's where we are right now. We'll have more updates with the timing as we get closer to March 7th. They do hope to be done by Holy Week and Easter, and so hopefully this will all be done by the time all of that rolls around. And so I think that's it. That's all I have right now to report on with regards to the roof. I know it was a longer video, but there was a lot of information to get out there, and we felt that the video was the best way to do it. But I am available if you have any questions or anything. I have become a bit of a roof expert through this process. So if you have questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to get with me or give me a call or write me an email, and I can address those. We'll take questions at the annual meeting, and then of course more questions as we get closer to the actual roof project. But I know I'm excited about this project. It's an expensive project. It's a big project, but it's going to solve all of our roof leaks and also set Holy Trinity up for the long haul, so that we don't have to worry about roofing issues at least for another couple of decades. And so, like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to me. But that's going to be the end of this video. So as I have said, until I get to see you again, may God's blessings be upon you, and may God bless us all through this next endeavor. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.